Hi, I'm Ms. Hadi from Olympian High School. My students and Ms. Rogerson's students have been learning about ancient Egypt, and we're currently learning about how the kingdoms of Egypt and Nubia transformed themselves. And the first thing we're going to learn about after we learned about the small kingdoms and monarchies they established is how we see the kingdom of Egypt become stronger than the kingdom of Nubia. So first of all, I want you to think of this as a sandwich. That's an easy way to remember it. Think that it goes like Nubia is strong at first, and then Egypt gets really strong for a while, and then it's Nubia again. So it goes Nubia, Egypt, Nubia. I have to do this part really fast, but you're expected to read it on your own to prepare for any little classwork assignments in class or for the big exam. Okay, so first of all, this corresponds to the Unification of Egypt section in your textbook. The first thing you need to know is that there were many kingdoms in the Nile River Valley that competed with each other. Some of them took over their neighbors. One of those kingdoms was Ch.3, which was a Nubian kingdom that ruled Nubia, the lands to the south of Egypt, up until the Nile's first cataract into Egypt. So remember, the cataracts this would be the first cataract here. So it was a Nubian kingdom that ruled all the way up to this first cataract. That was Ch.3. So Ch.3 was pretty strong, and then it starts to decline. And as it declines, the kingdoms of southern Egypt are in a very good position to take over the power vacuum that Ch.3 leaves, because Egypt was a richer land because of those broad floodplains. So around 3100 BCE, we're going to see Egypt start to become more powerful than the other Nubian kingdoms under a ruler named Menes, who is often associated with another name, Narmer. Some people think he's the same person. Okay, so according to legend, it was Menes who founded the first Egyptian empire or kingdom. He's going to build a city, the city of Memphis, which is between Upper and Lower Egypt. I want to remind you that Upper Egypt is actually below and Lower Egypt is actually north, because the Nile River flows north. So this becomes both a political center and a cultural center for Egypt. And they're going to build a very centralized state where the pharaoh, which is the name of the Egyptian king, has the most power. So unlike the kings of Mesopotamia in chapter 2 that share a lot of power with the nobles, these rulers are much more powerful. The pharaohs aren't sharing as much power. The pharaohs claim to be gods on earth in the human form, and at first they were often associated with the sky god named Horus, and they were often depicted with a hawk or a falcon next to them and being larger than life, larger than their human subjects. After a while, this was replaced with the idea that the pharaohs were not necessarily, part one with the sky god or part of the sky god, but eventually would merge with the sun god named Amun. So it was believed that when they died, they remerged with the sun god. Now, there are 4 major periods of Egyptian history. The 2 oldest ones are the ones where Egypt is the strongest, the Archaic period and the Old Kingdom. You'll read in your book about how during the Old Kingdom, and you need to remember this for the test, they built these massive pyramids which served as tombs for the pharaohs. And you'll read about these pyramids in your book, in the Pyramid of Khufu. You can read all about what it took to build those pyramids. Okay, the relationship between Egypt and Nubia in this time was sometimes one that involved competition over commerce, which means trade, competition over control and power, so that's politics. So it'll tell you about the things that they wanted to exchange with each other, but often Egypt sought to take over Nubia. So these tensions often led to violence during the early periods, the Archaic and Old Kingdom. And the early pharaohs of Egypt, 5 different occasions, campaigned or took their militaries into Nubia. And as you know, the Egyptian kingdoms are going to destroy what's left of the kingdom of Ch.3, so you've already learned about that. That forces the Nubian leaders to go further south and establish a capital there called the Kingdom of Kush, with a capital at Kerma. You're going to need to know about this Nubian kingdom. If you're doing an inspect chart, put it in a separate category so you know about the Kingdom of Kush. And again, it's not as powerful, but it is still formidable. Formidable is a word that means inspiring respect or fear. It's great. It's a wealthy state that sometimes threatens southern Egypt. Despite these hostilities, Egypt and Nubia were still traded with each other, and you'll read about an example where they traded with each other. Okay, by the time of the Old Kingdom, many Nubian people actually served as mercenaries in the Egyptian armies. They were prominent or widely seen in these armies, important in these armies. A mercenary is someone that fights for money. And there's also some mixing or syncretism, as we see Nubian people mix with Egyptian people by having families together, making babies together, and sometimes assimilating or becoming a part of Egyptian society.